The moon hangs low over the Aegean Sea, like an indecisive olive in a cup of watered-down wine. Its reflection dances gently on the waves, the way dreams ripple through a half-sleeping mind. Cicadas buzz, not out of urgency, but out of habit-like. That neighbor who always sweeps the same spot every morning, regardless of whether anything's there. Somewhere off in the not-so-distance, a goat sneezes. You hear it, and strangely, you're not surprised. Welcome, wanderer, or dreamer, or curious soul who clicked on this video by mistake and now finds themselves too comfortable to scroll away. You are here, wherever here is, and in this story, you'll be walking alongside a man, well, sort of a man, sort of a disappointment, who slept through most of his own myth. No dragons to slay tonight, no epic battles to endure. Just sandals, snoozes, and the slow trudge of fate. You probably won't make it through this day, but in a good way. Before we begin, allow yourself to settle. Dim the lights, fluff your pillow with historical accuracy, and gently consider liking this video. Not because you have to, but because your subconscious will thank you for it later. And if your eyes are still open, why not comment below with your location and local time? We like to imagine this as a soft constellation of yawns across the dia world. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You find yourself standing on a dusty trail in a part of Greece no tourist brochure ever dares to feature. The sun is doing its best to be dramatic, casting golden beams through the crooked limbs of olive trees. Bees hum lazily from flower to flower, unaware they'll be immortalized in 3 different myths by the time the week is out. Your feet ache already, which is inconvenient because technically your quest hasn't started yet. But then again, neither has his meet Aetolian. No, not Odysseus, not Theseus, not even Bellerophon. Aetolian, a name that sounds suspiciously like it was invented by a scribe running out of parchment and patience. His heroic feat, falling asleep during a divine prophecy, then sort of bumbling through the aftermath, like someone trying to remember where they parked their donkey. It's the 7th century BCE allegedly. Historians still debate whether this tale occurred before or after the rise of temple tourism, a booming industry in which people paid to sleep in sacred places and hoped the gods would text them in their dreams. You're currently outside one such temple, modest in size, but impressively symmetrical, because even the gods appreciate geometry. Inside, the air is cool, thick with incense and dust and divine ambiguity. Priests in linen robes shuffle about, like overworked librarians, and on a stone bench, face down, snoring into a pile of laurel leaves, lies Aetolian. You pause. You blink. Yes, he's already asleep. No, he hasn't done anything heroic yet. That's sort of the point. He had come here hoping for guidance from the god Asclepius, patron of healing and dreams. But like many who came before him, he may have misread the fine print. Dream or not, sleep came swiftly, too swiftly. It's unclear whether the god spoke to him at all, or if he simply dreamt of talking chickens and then rolled off the bench. The temple priest claims he muttered the words, "Is this about the sheep?" in his sleep. Make of that what you will. Your task now, as a fellow wanderer, is to follow this man not because he is inspiring, but because he is inexplicably chosen. You shuffle out of the temple as Aetolian finally stirs, rubbing his eyes like a child who forgot to set an alarm for destiny. He stretches, yawns, and mutters. That was probably significant. Somewhere behind you, a priest sighs audibly. Autolians. First act of quasi-heroism is to trip over a tortoise. The tortoise does not care. The tortoise has seen 5 would-be heroes this week alone and knows that most of them end up as cautionary frescoes on tavern walls. You walk together now eastward, because the oracle said something about the rising sun, or maybe a raisin bun. It's hard to tell with divine messages. And so begins the journey, one step at a time, in sandals slightly too small, guided by memory, hope, and a suspiciously detailed dream about figs. Remember, this is not a story of war or glory. This is a story of wandering, of wondering, and of discovering that the path to meaning often includes a lot of naps that you continue down the trail, accompanied by the sleepy crunch of gravel, the occasional burp of a distant frog, and the unmistakable realization that maybe, just maybe, you've already started drifting off. And that's perfectly fine. The road is a suggestion more than a structure, a lazy string of stones barely distinguishable from the surrounding terrain. You follow Autolian as he meanders like a man with time to waste and nowhere specific to waste it. His stride is inconsistent, sometimes determined, sometimes distracted, occasionally interrupted by a sudden fascination with wild time. You hear the wind now, that gentle, warm kind that doesn't blow so much as lean against you. Somewhere behind you, the temple fades into the heat haze, its columns reduced to sleepy brushstrokes in the air. Ahead, the land opens into a gentle slope, dotted with shrubs and sheep, so many sheep, and none of them look impressed. Autolian squints at the horizon like it owes him money. I think we're close, he says. You don't ask what he means by close, because frankly, you doubt he knows either. This is the kind of quest where close might mean within a week's walk or philosophically adjacent. His plan, if you can call it that, involves finding a legendary shield said to belong to Ajax the Great. Yes, that Ajax, the one from the Iliad, not the cleaning product. Allegedly, the shield was buried on the White Isle, a mythical resting place for fallen Greek heroes, or possibly just a very foggy island where people like to wear capes. The only problem? No one knows exactly where it is, which, let's be honest, is pretty on brand for ancient myths. Historians still debate whether the White Isle refers to Leuce, an actual island in the Black Sea, or whether it was just poetic license for place. We don't feel like fact-checking. Either way, Autolian is convinced he has to go there, mostly because a sleepy dream voice told him so. As the sun shifts overhead, you find yourself entering a village, not the kind with souvenir shops or curated ruins, but a living, breathing cluster of stone houses and wooden carts and chickens who take their guard duties very seriously. Children run barefoot through the dust, chasing each other and yelling things that would definitely violate modern noise ordinances. The local blacksmith, who appears to be the only man in the village under 60 watches, you both approach with the weary patience of someone who's been asked for directions too many times. Autolian, ever the eloquent traveler, opens with, "Hi, is there, a ferry to the afterlife?" The blacksmith stares. You consider intervening, but instead, you quietly observe as Autolian tries to explain the dream, the shield, and the island, all while gesturing like someone describing a bird that may or may not exist. Surprisingly, the blacksmith nods. "You'll want to talk tomorrow," he says, pointing toward a cottage that leans slightly to the left, as if eavesdropping on its neighbor. Tomorrow turns out to be a woman with eyebrows like thunderclouds and a voice like unfiltered prophecy. She's knitting something complicated looking and does not pause her needles as she listens. "White Isle," she mutters. "That's what they call it now. Used to be just that place with the echoes." She shrugs. "You'll need a boat and a gift." Autolian perks up. "What kind of gift?" "Something that says you're not an idiot," Morrow replies. You watch as Autolian processes this for several long seconds. "What about olives?" he offers. You suspect this is his go-to suggestion for most problems. Morrow sighs, but doesn't. Object, which in ancient Greek standards is practically a blessing. You spend the evening in the village, listening to old fishermen complain about tides that never existed and women who remember when the gods used to drop by unannounced. A local storyteller offers a riddle that sounds suspiciously like he made it up on the spot, and an old man insists that in his youth he met a seagull who knew Homer personally. The night thickens. The stars appear in clumps, like breadcrumbs, on a dark tablecloth. Somewhere in the distance, a donkey practices its existential cry. Autolian lies on a borrowed mat beneath an awning of reeds, staring at the sky. "Do you think I'm supposed to succeed?" he asks you quietly. You don't. Answer, not because you don't know, but because the question itself seems beside the point. Sleep comes easily now. The air is heavy with time and old stories. You hear your own breathing, slow and steady, as the village settles into silence. And just like that, the quest begins again tomorrow. Maybe if Autolian wakes up on time. Morning arrives in a half-hearted way, the sun stretching reluctantly over the horizon like someone reconsidering their day off. The village rooster crows a full 15 minutes after the donkeys have already begun complaining about the light. You awaken to the soft sound of sheep hooves, a hint of bread baking, and Autolian snoring with all the confidence of a man who assumes fate has snooze buttons. Eventually, Autolian stirs, blinking at the sun like it's a personal inconvenience. He mutters something about prophetic pastries, stretches in a way that does not inspire heroism, and announces, "Today's the day." You get the sense he says this most mornings, regardless of the day's contents. The plan, according to Morrow, is to catch a small fishing vessel heading toward a stretch of sea where, allegedly, the mists are thicker and the gulls whisper your secrets. The boat is captained by a man named Dorian, who has only 2 teeth but 20 stories, each involving a storm, a woman named Thalia, and at least 1 talking dolphin. You and Autolian find him just before midday, standing beside a boat that looks more like a wet basket. With ambitions. Dorian is chewing on something twig-like and nods at you both with the kind of solemnity normally reserved for funerals or particularly stubborn knots. "You've got a gift?" he asks. Autolian holds up a small jar of olives. Dorian squints. "What kind?" "Cured, with rosemary." He nods slowly, as if that explains everything. "That'll do." The sea is calm at first, an old friend in a good mood. The boat creaks, like an old man stretching his knees, and Dorian hums something haunting and wordless. You sit near the front, watching as the coastline recedes behind a curtain of mist that thickens with each passing wave. Soon, visibility drops to a few feet. The world becomes a sphere of water, wood, and pale fog. Dorian continues humming. Autolian is asleep again. You're not sure if he's dreaming or if dreaming is simply his default state of being. There's a moment quiet and odd when a fish jumps beside the boat and seems to hover slightly longer than physics should allow. Dorian doesn't blink. The veil's thinner here, he murmurs. Sometimes things forget what they are. Historians still debate whether ancient Greeks truly believed in places like the White Isle, or if such myths were coded metaphors for unresolved grief. Either way, the fog has its own language now, and you're learning it one breath at a time. Eventually, a shape emerges from the mist. An island not large, but defined. Rocky cliffs, pale sands, and trees that bend in synchronized confusion, as if perpetually unsure of which direction the wind is coming from. The boat scrapes gently against the shore. Dorian doesn't step off. I go no further, he says. Chewing thoughtfully, dead things talk too loud here. Autolian, now awake and blinking at the sky like he forgot it existed, climbs ashore with you. He takes a deep breath and says, "Smells like destiny." You suspect it smells more like wet limestone and damp time. As you walk inland, the silence thickens. Even the birds don't bother singing here. Stones are scattered in strange formations, like ancient chess pieces abandoned mid-game. A small shrine stands crooked at the center of the island, carved with faces long weathered smooth, offerings long vanished. All that remains is a bronze plate, green with age. Autolian kneels. He places the jar of olives on the plate with surprising reverence. Then he clears his throat and mutters, "Hi, sorry, I'm late." A breeze picks up. Or maybe it was always there. From the edge of the cliff, you hear something that sounds very much like a sigh. And then, from the shadows of a crumbling wall, something stirs. No, not a ghost. Not exactly. A man tall, pale, and dressed like he wandered out of a tapestry. His eyes are tired in the way stars are tired, eternally burning, never blinking. He steps forward, his sandals not touching the earth so much as remembering how to. "You are not a warrior," the figure says. Autolian opens his mouth, closes it, then says, "No, but I single quotes am ... trying." The figure nods once, slowly, then you may carry the name. Before you can ask what name, or what exactly is happening, the man reaches into nothingness and pulls forth a shield. It gleams, dully marked with a faded insignia. It is too heavy, too large, and unmistakably real. Autolian takes it with both hands, staggers slightly, laughs nervously. "That's heavier than I thought." The figure smiles faintly, like a man who just finished telling a very long joke no one understood. And then he fades, just like that, into mist, into memory, into myth. Autolian looks at you, holding the shield like a lost tourist clutching a rental surfboard. So ... Now what? You shrug. And the wind answers in the only way it knows by. Moving on, leaving the island is less dramatic than you'd expect. No lightning bolts. No triumphant music. Just Dorian, still chewing, still humming, as if time paused while you were gone. Autolian places the shield carefully in the boat, then sits beside it as though waiting for it to give further instructions. It does not. The journey back is quiet. The fog lifting slowly, reluctantly, as if embarrassed to have revealed too much. You sail past sea rocks that might be petrified gods or just geological accidents. Somewhere, a gull screams an opinion into the wind. Back on the mainland, the sun is setting again. Time folds itself like a sleepy cat, disinterested in chronology. Autolian hefts the shield onto his back with some difficulty. I think this means I've completed something, he says. Then adds, probably. The blacksmith is the first to spot you returning. He squints, sees the shield, and nods slowly. Well, well. Didn't expect that. Autolian beams. Me neither. Theirs. A small celebration that night, small by necessity, as the village has limited resources and an even more limited attention span. Bread is baked, stories are told, and someone plays a flute with only moderate success. Morrow raises an eyebrow at the shield and mutters, well, he didn't drop it, so that's something. You sit by the fire, the warmth creeping into your bones. Autolian watches the flames with a look of cautious satisfaction. I thought it would feel more finished, he says. Maybe it's not, you reply. He considers this, nods, then yawns dramatically, as though preparing for an encore nap. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some regions of ancient Greece, it was believed that heroes who visited the underworld or spoke with shades had to eat a special root called moli afterward to avoid bringing back sorrow. Autolian, meanwhile, just eats a date and declares it transformational. Historians still debate whether his story was ever recorded in official myth cycles, or whether his name simply got smudged in a scroll somewhere between Otamedon and Autolycus. Later that night, the shield sits propped against a wall, silently gleaming in the firelight. No one touches it. Autolian sleeps soundly, arms sprawled, dreams mercifully fig-free this time. You find your own quiet place beneath a tree, lulled by the scent of smoke, the distant hoot of an owl, and the rhythm of breathing that only comes when the quest is no longer urgent. For now, Morning returns with a kind of sheepish shrug, as though embarrassed to interrupt whatever this is adventure. Retirement. Mild existential detour. The sun filters through fig leaves with gentle hesitation, and somewhere nearby, a chicken makes a sound so indecisive. You're not sure if it's laying an egg or just commenting on the state of things. Autolian wakes slowly, as usual. His hair points in 3 distinct directions, each implying a different dream. He squints at the shield like he's seeing it for the first time. Did we win something? He asks. You do not answer. Today's plan, vague as ever, involves taking the shield to a temple dedicated to Athena on a hill so steep it looks like a test invented by bored demigods. Apparently, Autolian believes he's supposed to present it. To whom? For what? Why? These details remain shrouded in myth, fog, and general disinterest. As you leave the village behind, a few locals wave without enthusiasm. A child calls after Autolian. Try not to fall asleep in the temple this time. He gives a thumbs up with all the dignity of a man who once tried to pay for bread with seashells. The road coils upward, stony and stubborn. The shield clanks against his back with every step. By noon, Autolian has declared the hill dramatic no fewer than 4 times. You pass shepherds who regard you with quiet judgment, goats with unnerving eye contact, and a rock that looks suspiciously like a god's abandoned sandal. The wind grows cooler as the trees thin out, replaced by scrubby patches of sage and thyme and occasional heroic-looking lizards. Finally, you reach the summit. The Temple of Athena stands there, not massive, not grand, but austere in a way that suggests everyone inside takes themselves very seriously. Columns lean just slightly, like they've been eavesdropping on centuries of human nonsense. Autoleon steps inside. You follow. The air is cool, dry, and suspiciously quiet. A priest, thin, pale, with an expression suggesting he's been bored since the last eclipse approaches. He looks at Autoleon, then at the shield. And what, he says, voice flat. As parchment, do you suppose that is? Autoleon, bless him, answers with confidence, an offering. The priest raises a single eyebrow so high you fear it might detach. Nonetheless, he leads you toward the altar, a smooth slab of marble with faint traces of old wine stains and candle wax. Autoleon places the shield on it gently, as if afraid. It might wake up. He clears his throat. I return this in honor of Ajax. May his memory be strong, or at least moderately well preserved. There is a pause. A long one. Then the priest nods. Very well, he says. You may rest. Rest? Autoleon brightens. The priest gestures to a small stone bench near the altar. Yes, heroes who fulfill quests are allowed to rest within Athena's halls. Autoleon is asleep in less than 30 seconds. You sit nearby, listening to the wind move through the temple like an old story being whispered again. Somewhere outside, a crow laughs, or maybe coughs. It's hard to tell with crows. Obscure cultural tidbit. In certain rural temples, it was common for priests to interpret dreams not by their content, but by how loud the dreamer snored. Louder dreams meant more divine approval. Autoleon, by that metric, is essentially Zeus. Historians still debate whether Ajax's shield was ever recovered, or whether the stories of its return were invented by temples looking to attract more donations and sleepy pilgrims. When Autoleon wakes again, it's late afternoon. His hair now points in 5 directions. Did something happen? He asks. Probably, you say. He shrugs, satisfied that the descent from the temple is slower, less because of gravity and more because Autoleon insists on narrating his own imagined legacy. I shall be known, he declares, as Autoleon the sleep-laden, the drowsy deliverer. The night of naps. You gently suggest he not get business cards printed just yet. The road winds through olive groves now, quiet and silver green. The heat of the day has passed, leaving only that soft golden hour when even time seems to stretch and yawn. You stop at a small spring half natural, half sacred, where pilgrims often leave small tokens, carved shells, folded bits of parchment, coins so worn they're mostly suggestion. Autoleon stares into the water. You ever wonder if it all meant something? You do. But instead, you reply, sometimes the meaning comes later. Like mold. He nods solemnly, either deeply moved or entirely confused. You walk together again, passing an old woman carrying 3 chickens under one arm and a sense of judgment under the other. She eyes Autoleon's tousled hair and dusty sandals. You, returning from battle? She asks, eyebrow cocked. Sort of, he says. Did you win? I think I outweighted it. She considers this. nods once. Sounds about right. By nightfall, you arrive in a small town with exactly one inn, a crooked building that leans like it's whispering gossip to the chimney. The innkeeper, a man, with fingers like sausages and a voice like oiled leather, offers a room and stew, and not a single question. Bless him, the room is plain. The walls covered in faded frescoes of heroes doing impressively boring things. Farming, fetching water, balancing amphorae on their heads. One of them looks suspiciously like he's asleep standing up. Autoleon flops onto the bed, sighing like a defeated demigod. I keep thinking there's a next part. He murmurs, "There probably is," you reply. He yawns, long and loud and heroic in its own drowsy way. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some small towns in Arcadia believed that the dreams of travelers brought blessings. Inns would place lavender under pillows and encourage guests to snore, hoping the gods might visit mid-snuffle. Historians still debate whether inns like this one doubled as informal oracles, or if that's just a poetic excuse for gossip. You lie back, listening to the soft clatter of dishes below, the occasional creak of beams, and the quiet rhythm of two people exhaling at slightly different intervals. Sleep presses at the edges of your vision. Outside, the moon rises indifferent and ancient. Somewhere in the dark, a shield rests quietly on a temple altar, content to be admired or forgotten. Asterisk, you awaken before. Autoleon, an achievement worthy of minor praise and a gold laurel if anyone's keeping score. The morning light leaks through the crooked shutters, casting lines across the floor like a sketch only half finished. Below, the inn slowly stirs to life, the clink of a spoon against pottery, a yawn stretched into song, the distant sound of someone swearing at a goat with deep personal history. Autoleon, meanwhile, is curled into a pile of blanket and hair, mumbling something that might be a battle speech or just an order for more olives. Eventually, he sits up, eyes still closed. "Did I miss the next prophecy?" he asks. You tell him there isn't one. Oh, good. The day ahead is unclear. There is no urgent quest, no divine whisper tugging him toward destiny's doorstep. Just a loose memory of a river shrine and the feeling that maybe he should keep moving before someone remembers to assign him actual responsibilities. You wander out of the inn into streets that smell of fresh bread, sheep wool, and the type of hope that clings to morning. The town is small, like a poem scrawled in the margin of a much more important epic. A potter nods at you both as he shapes a vessel without looking, a chicken perched on his shoulder like a very judgmental hat. Autoleon stops to examine a stall, selling woven charms, bundles of herbs, feathers, and bits of bone, tied together with string and mild superstition. These, the vendor says, are for travelers who wish to avoid accidents. Do they work? Autoleon asks. The vendor shrugs. Well, you're still here, aren't you? Autoleon buys one and tucks it into his belt like a talisman, even though it looks suspiciously like a bird's unfinished homework. You continue your stroll toward the town's edge, where the ground softens into hills and the air grows thick with bees and slow conversation. The shrine is another half-day's walk, tucked beside a river known for babbling both in sound and in local legend. Supposedly, the water speaks to those who listen closely enough, although it mainly seems to mutter about fish and recent rainfall. Along the path, you pass a shepherd boy singing to his flock. The song is strange and lovely, full of vowels stretched. like taffy and lyrics about clouds that wear sandals. Autolian listens, then hums along, utterly off-key, but blissfully unaware. The river comes into view by mid-afternoon wide, slow, shimmering with the kind of quiet that asks nothing in return. The shrine is a simple structure, a stone column. Wrapped in ivy, a flat surface bearing tiny offerings coins, flowers, a small bronze mirror, and what appears to be an apologetic plum. Autolian approaches with surprising stillness. He kneels, cups water in his hands, and pours it over his head. To clear the dream juice, he mutters, you sit beneath a tree, watching as he stares into the current like it owes him answers. Obscure cultural tidbit. In certain rustic cults of Hermes, rivers were believed to carry not just water, but messages, lost thoughts, whispered regrets. The occasional insult shouted upstream by a bored oracle. Autolian takes a long breath. I think I'm supposed to be doing something next, he says. You ask what that might be. He shrugs. That's the part I was hoping the river would tell. Me. Historians still debate whether rituals like this were truly prophetic or simply reflective spiritual ways to slow down and confront the deep. Buzzing silence between events. The sun begins to lower. The wind picks up, brushing through the reeds like fingers through ancient hair. Autolian eventually stands, squeezes out his tunic, and announces, well, that didn't help, but it felt nice. You nod. That counts for something. You follow. The river downstream toward a grove where travelers often stop for the night. The ground is soft, the trees old, and the stars begin to poke through the sky like shy guests arriving too early to a party. By firelight, Autolian begins telling a story he's only halfway making up. It involves a heroic mule, a magical apron, and a battle that was mostly yelling. You listen, smiling. The words spill out with no destination in mind, just for the pleasure of hearing. Something familiar and new at the same time. You fall asleep to the sound of him narrating his own myth, as if daring it to become true. When you wake, the fire is out, the sky is pale, and Autolian is trying to cook an egg on a flat rock. You suspect the rock is winning. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? He asks suddenly, turning the egg with a stick. You glance around. Trees, birds, a squirrel performing advanced acrobatics in a fig tree. Nothing particularly ominous. Autolian shrugs. Probably just the gods, or a judgmental owl. The day begins. Lazily, like a cat deciding whether it feels like pouncing. You follow a path that wanes along the riverbank, occasionally disappearing into root-woven hollows and re-emerging near clusters of wild fennel. The air smells sharp and sweet, like secrets half-dash forgotten. As you walk, Autolian begins inventing aphorisms. Never trust a fish that swims alone. Destiny is just effort with a better costume. You can tell a god by how little they need to explain themselves. You don't correct him. By midday, you come upon a peculiar sight, a stone amphitheater carved into a hillside, overgrown and dappled with moss. It's far too remote to be practical, far too ornate to be accidental. At its center is a statue, a woman seated, her hand raised as if mid-conversation, her expression somewhere between eternal wisdom and mild annoyance. Autolian gasps. Is that? You check a weathered inscription. Thespeia. Muse of minor digressions. Huh, he says. Fitting. He climbs the stage and begins speaking to the empty rows, delivering a speech to an audience of moss and ghost critics. It's part heroic monologue, part confession, and part speculation about what happens if you sneeze during divine revelation. You sit and listen, and for a moment, something about it all feels correct, not grand, not noble, but aligned obscure. Cultural tidbit. In some cults of the Muses, minor amphitheaters like this one were built for storytelling contests, where the winner received honey cakes and the loser had to explain themselves to a goat. Autolyon's voice softens near the end. I think I'm not really a hero, he says, but I keep waking up in the right places. That must count for something. You nod. Historians still debate whether figures like Autolyon ever truly existed or were invented to make greater heroes look more impressive by comparison. But in moments like this, it doesn't matter. You leave the amphitheater with the kind of silence that feels earned. That night, you find yourselves in another village, this one quieter, with shuttered windows and candles blowing through cracks. You're given lodging in the old meeting house, where the walls are decorated with reliefs of women balancing loaves of bread while arguing with invisible husbands. Autolyon lies back, staring at the wooden ceiling. We're getting close to something, he says. You ask what? He shrugs. Maybe not a goal. Maybe just a good sentence. And then he sleeps, open-mouthed, as if inviting dreams to walk in unannounced. The morning is cold, not dramatic, just nippy in that way that makes you tuck your cloak tighter and consider skipping destiny for a warm breakfast. The village slowly breathes itself awake. A baker's fire crackling in the dark, a milk jug tipping, a low-voiced argument about where someone left the olives this time. Autolyon, to no one's surprise, is still asleep. You leave him there for a while, curled beneath a tapestry that depicts some forgotten feast involving extremely bored-looking lions. When he finally stirs, he stretches like someone preparing to lift a mountain, then proceeds to yawn for a full 30 seconds. I had a dream. He mumbles. You wait. He sits up, hair askew. It was very specific. A woman in gold armor told me I had to pay tribute to the cradle before the gate will open. And then she turned into a swan, with attitude. You nod, as if this makes perfect sense. I think it's metaphorical. He adds, you agree. Most things are, in his world, by the time you finish breakfast barley cakes and suspiciously aggressive honey. The day has warmed enough to make travel seem like a reasonable decision. You set out again, following a winding path through the hills toward what locals vaguely refer to as the cradle. No one agrees on where it is, but several old men nodded gravely when you asked, which is usually a good sign. The landscape shifts fewer. Villages now, more trees. The air smells of damp earth and pine and the occasional stubborn goat. Birds call overhead in patterns that might be prophetic, if you had the energy to interpret them. Eventually, you find it. A small valley cradled between hills, ringed by cliffs that look like they've been watching each other for centuries. At the center, a pool, still, deep, reflective in a way that makes your stomach quietly disagree. Autolyon stops walking. That's it, he says, with the confidence of someone who has no idea what he's talking about. He approaches the edge, peers in, and sees nothing but his own reflection, blurred, tired, slightly heroic if you squint. So, tribute. He says, you shrug. That's what the dream swan said. He fumbles through his satchel, finds an old bracelet, a token from an earlier, better-remembered quest, and drops it into the water. It disappears without a sound. The pool responds with a ripple. Just one dot then. Silence. You both wait. Still silence. Autolian sighs. Maybe it was a metaphor about metaphors. Obscure cultural tidbit. In ancient Arcadian traditions, reflective pools were believed to hold the memories of the land. Travelers could offer memories to the water by telling stories aloud. Some even claimed to forget the tale entirely, after speaking it as though it were absorbed. And so, Autolian kneels beside the pool and begins to speak. He tells the story of the shield, of the island, of the statue and the shrine and the river that didn't answer. And when he's done, he sits back. The pool ripples again, this time forming a slow spiral, as if thoughtfully digesting the narrative. Then, in its center, something floats up, a small wooden disc carved with a single symbol, a keyhole. You take it, warm from the water. It feels metaphorical, but possibly useful. Historians still debate whether talking pools were natural springs or ceremonial devices for shared storytelling. Some believe they were early forms of oral archives encoded in ritual rather than ink. Autolian stands. So now we find the gate. He seems surprised at his own determination. You are as you walk from the cradle. A crow circles overhead, cawing with enthusiasm usually reserved for court jesters and startled bakers. You get the feeling it knows something you don't. You follow a narrow road out of the hills, one that twists like it was designed by someone with a grudge against straight lines. Along the way, you pass more ruined stone outlines of homes long vanished, half-buried jars, stairs that lead to nowhere. Autolian notes each one like they're clues in a puzzle. He's just pretending to understand. Maybe the gate's through one of these, he says, poking at a slab with a stick, or beneath, or metaphorically nearby. He's beginning to enjoy saying metaphorically a bit too much. Eventually, the path drops into a valley, shaded by cypress trees that lean just enough to suggest curiosity. At the center stands a strange structure, a circular wall, moss-covered, partially collapsed, with a wide archway leading nowhere. There, Autolian breathes. That has to be it. You both approach with caution. Birds fall silent. The wind hesitates. Inside the ringed wall, time feels suspended. The air hums faintly like an old lyre string long out of tune. At the center of the stone floor is a pedestal, and on it a lock-shaped recess, perfectly matching the wooden disc. Autolian steps forward, carefully sets the disc in place. Nothing happens. You both wait. Then, a low vibration, not a noise, a feeling, in your bones, in the stones. In the story itself, the pedestal slowly sinks into the ground, revealing a set of steps descending into darkness. You exchange a look. Autolian grins. That's very quest-like. He lights a torch from a nearby sconce. There's always a conveniently placed sconce in these places. It's a mythological requirement. You descend together, steps echoing in stone. The walls are smooth, old, carved with scenes of ships, storms, and sleeping giants. None of them are labeled, which seems unfair. Eventually, the staircase opens into a chamber, not vast, not majestic. Just a room, dusty, circular, silent. In the center sits a stone seat and a basin filled with water. No gold, no monsters. Number. Scrolls of wisdom. Just water. Ottolian kneels again. You think this is like the other pool? You nod. He speaks. This time the story is longer. He tells of the dreams, of you, of the road and the shield and the empty amphitheater, of feeling uncertain, but walking anyway. As he speaks, the basin begins to glow, not with light exactly, but with clarity. Like the moment you understand something you've known all along. Then it fades. He stands. On the wall opposite, a door. Now sits wooden, sealed, but real. You both approach. Obscure cultural tidbit. Certain underground sanctuaries in northern Greece were said to be gates of reflection, where initiates spoke truths allowed to pass forward. Lying supposedly caused the stone itself to hum and protest. Historians still debate whether these rituals served any actual religious function, or if they were simply elaborate excuses to hear someone confess they forgot their anniversary. Ottolian places his hand on the door. Do you think this leads somewhere important? He asks. You say yes. He nods. Then pushes. The door creaks open. And for a moment, just a moment, there is light. The light spills in, not golden or divine, but soft and silvery, like moonlight filtered through linen. It washes over the chamber with quiet insistence, revealing a passage beyond the door that's less tunnel and more grove. You step through into something that defies easy definition. The ground is stone, but it's cracked and carpeted with moss. Trees arch overhead in perfect symmetry, their branches swaying in a breeze that doesn't seem to exist. The air hums with distant chimes, or maybe just the sound of memory. Ottolian blinks. Are we outside? You both glance back. The door you entered through is gone, replaced by ivy and silence. You keep walking. The grove winds onward, looping in gentle arcs, like a dream trying to return to the beginning. Along the path are statues, some broken, some whole, all staring. They wear the expressions of people who've heard too many stories and don't know which ones were real. Eventually, the path ends at a wide circle of standing stones, each carved with symbols too old for translation. In the center lies a stone table covered in dust and dried petals. Ottolian steps forward. He doesn't speak. He just stares. On the table rests a scroll. Its seal is broken, its script strange, but the parchment hums slightly, like it remembers. Being written, he reads silently, lips moving. You wait. After a long while, he looks up. It's not a prophecy, he says. It's notes, observations, about me, about you, about the journey. Someone's been watching, writing it down. He turns the scroll so you can see. There, in faded ink, are phrases you recognize, exact ones from your conversations. From his dreams. From things never spoken aloud. It's like the story's been following us, he whispers. Obscure cultural tidbit. In certain esoteric circles of the ancient Orphic cults, it was believed that each soul was shadowed by a daimona, quiet chronicler, invisible and impartial, whose job was to record the truth of a life, not the legend. They were said to store their scrolls in groves like this one. Ottolian sets the scroll down gently. It says I can rest here. That the story's satisfied. He sits beside the table. you do too. Birds begin to sing gently, not in chorus, not in triumph, just casually, like it's a decent day. Historians still debate whether groves like these were real or symbolic spiritual metaphors for closure. Some scholars believe they were spaces used in ritual storytelling: enter, reflect, and release. Autolian leans back. You know, for a guy who didn't do much, I did kind of a lot. You agree. He grins. You spend what might be hours or no time at all beneath those trees. The breeze moves like a voice just out of hearing range. Eventually, Autolian rises, dusts himself off. Well, he says, let's go not finish this somewhere else. And with that, you leave the grove. The return is strangely instantaneous. One step out of the grove, and you're back in the valley with the keyhole gate. The sky hasn't changed. The birds are mid-flap. Time, it seems, waited patiently. Autolian looks around. That was fast. You start down the hillside, neither hurried nor aimless. The valley now feels less like a riddle and more like a resting place. At the base, you find a traveler's shrine, a tiny one, marked with symbols for Hermes, god of paths, feet, and flustered messengers. A few pebbles have been stacked on its edge in a kind of casual offering. Autolian adds one, then another. Then takes one back, saying, that one looked smug. The road leads through another village. You don't stop, but people wave. A woman smiles, as if recognizing you from a dream. A dog barks once, then thinks better of it. You make camp that night under an open sky. No roof, no ruins, just stars. Too many to count, and the smell of grass that's lived a good life. Autolian doesn't talk much. Eventually, though, he says, I think I get it now. You wait. The story wasn't about the shield or the gate. It was just being followed, having someone there, letting it be told. You nod. He grins sleepily. Still, I did return a divine artifact, just in case anyone's asking. The stars shift slowly. A few fall, like careless commas in a celestial sentence. Obscure cultural tidbit. In obscure Thessalian myth, a constellation known only as the Walker was said to follow unremarkable heroes, lighting their path not for glory, but for companionship. Historians still debate whether the myth was real or invented by shepherds to explain why they talked to the sky so much. Autolian lies back. You do too. The fire crackles. The grass sighs. And the story, wherever it is now, pauses to catch its breath. You wake slowly, the warmth of the sun peeling back the layers of sleep like an old friend opening shutters. A bird lands on Autolian's knee and stares at him for a moment, unsure whether to bless or pity him. It decides on neither and flutters off. Autolian sits up with a grunt that suggests old age, wisdom, or a poorly slept-on stick. Did I dream, he mutters, or did we find the end of a story last night? You assure him it was real, or at least it happened. Well then, he says, stretching his arms and nearly slapping a nearby bush, it seems like we should immediately begin another story. You pack up the camp. The coals are buried, the grass patted back into vague respectability, and the road ahead, such as it is wide, slightly muddy, and completely free of instructions. Autolian insists on leading. You don't remind him. He's never once chosen the right direction on the first try. The journey wanes toward the coast. Again, this time a different stretch of sea, less mythic, more practical. Along the way, you pass farmers hauling bundles of reeds, boys racing terracotta pots as if they were chariots, and a woman selling herbs that smell suspiciously like divine encouragement. You stop at a wayside market, where an old man tells you the tale of the snoozing hero of Nyx, who once overslept a war and ended up being declared a peace symbol. Attolian laughs until he realizes this may not be a compliment. That evening, you reach a fishing village that looks like it was built as an afterthought. Boats are tied loosely, cats own every step, and the smell of salt and grilled octopus hangs. In the air like gossip, you're offered a room above a wine shop. The ceiling is low, the floor creaks with every breath, and there's a painting of a fish that seems to follow you with its eyes. But it's quiet and safe. Attolian sits on the balcony, watching the stars drip one by one into the sea. I wonder if they're watching again, he says. You ask who. He shrugs. The listeners. The ones who want to hear how it ends. You smile. It's a nice thought, imagining distant minds, drifting to sleep to the rhythm of someone else's footsteps. Obscure cultural tidbit. In one fragment of a lost play by Euripides, a chorus describes the dreamers in foreign lands who wake for our songs and sleep through our glory. Scholars think it was either a jab at foreign audiences or an ancient reference to fans in other time zones. Historians still debate whether oral tales were ever meant to be finished at all, or if they were designed to loop endlessly, letting each generation fall asleep inside the same rhythms. Attolian looks at you. I hope they like our story, he says, his voice soft and a little unsure. You tell him they already do. He leans back and falls asleep on the balcony, one sandal dangling off his foot, the stars catching in his hair. There's a fog over the sea in the morning, a gentle woolen fog, thick enough to blur the boats, thin enough to let light spill in like diluted honey. The village seems half submerged in dreams. Fishermen move slowly, as if unsure if they're awake or still rowing through someone else's story. Attolian wakes with a stiff neck and an unusual sense of purpose. We should go inland, he declares. I think I'm done with oceans. You point out he's been done with several things this week, including prophecies, figs, and walking uphill. He ignores you and starts packing. You walk inland together, passing through olive groves that buzz with bees and gossip. The trees are gnarled like old thinkers, bent toward the sun in quiet conversation. By midday, you reach a hill where an old oracle once lived, or so the locals say. Now it's just stone ruins, 2 columns, and a tree growing directly through the middle of the hearth. Attolian stands under the tree. If I were an oracle, he says, I'd definitely live here. It smells like rosemary and very old thoughts. He closes his eyes. I don't want another quest, he says quietly, but I wouldn't mind ... continuing. You sit together under the tree. The wind moves through the ruins like a breath remembering how to speak. Time thins out again, eventually. An old goatherd appears on the path, whistling a tune that may be older than the stones themselves. He sees you both, nods, and says, Going the right way? Attolian pauses. I think we're going away. The goatherd considers this best kind. He moves on, and you continue to ... As evening falls, you find a small sanctuary abandoned, but still watched over. An offering bowl remains on a pedestal. In it, a coin, a pinnacone, and a single feather. Autolian adds something from his pack, the small charm he bought days ago. The one meant to ward off accidents. You kept it all this time? You ask Dot, he shrugs. Didn't not work. Obscure. Cultural tidbit. In forgotten Highland shrines, people would leave nonsensical items as tokens of honesty, things with no worth but full of memory. Priests would later sort them not by value, but by story. Historians still debate whether these sanctuaries served practical religious function or were simply rest stops for the metaphorically tired. Autolian looks at the setting sun, I think. We've passed the climax, he says. This feels like a very well-paced denouement. You agree. He chuckles. Still, I'll miss it when it's over. You remind him. It never really is. He nods, and you sit there until night arrives, silent and complete. The final morning comes without fanfare. The birds sing the same songs. The sun rises at its usual slow pace. A man with a donkey walks past you chewing a reed and humming something that sounds like a lullaby for lazy gods. Autolian doesn't say it aloud, but something in the way he rolls up his blanket carefully, for once, tells you he knows this chapter is ending. You set out along a new road. It doesn't matter where it leads. The pace is unhurried, the air already warm, the sky a pale canvas waiting for the light to get braver. Autolian's sandals slap softly on the dirt. He doesn't monologue today. No speeches, no dramatic declarations, not even a sleepy joke. He just walks, hands tucked behind his back, like a man content to be small for a while. You pass a vineyard, its grapes still green, its vines curling with slow ambition. A boy waves from between the rows and shouts, "Did you find your destiny?" Autolian shouts back, "I found a good place to sit down." The boy nods, as if that makes perfect sense. Further along, you find a marker stone old, mossy, barely readable. On its face is carved a single word. Pauses says rest. Autolian touches it gently. "That's a good word," he murmurs. "Sounds like it ends in a nap." You reach a high hill, one of those quiet places where the wind doesn't need to say much. Below lies a wide valley, all silver green and gold dust. You both sit on the edge, feet dangling like children, time stretching in all directions. "I used to think quests were supposed to be loud," Autolian says softly. "Swords, storms, statues yelling at you. But maybe they're just long walks with good company." You say nothing. It's the kind of moment that doesn't want commentary. Obscure cultural tidbit. Ancient Arcadian poets believed that the gods judged a hero not by what they conquered, but by how gracefully they ended. A hero who could retire with dignity was considered closer to divinity than one who kept fighting out of habit. Historians still debate whether this was genuine wisdom or a poetic excuse for not finishing things. Autolian lies back in the grass. "It's strange," he murmurs. "I set out to return a shield. I found a door, a pool, a grove, a scroll, and somehow I ended up ... here." You remind him it was never about the shield. He smiles with his eyes closed. "Yeah, it was about walking long enough to tell the story." The wind is warm. The clouds move like old gods stretching their limbs. Somewhere, a lyre plays itself, or maybe it's just the breeze in the reeds below. Autolian drifts off with his arms folded beneath his head and a look on his face. like he finally remembered the name of a song. You sit beside him, and watch the valley breathe. The hill softens beneath you. The breeze gentles its fingers through the grass. And slowly, the light begins to fade, not abruptly, not like a door closing, but like a candle politely bowing out of a conversation. Autolian sleeps beside you, his breathing steady, each rise and fall of his chest sinking with the hush of the wind. Far below, the valley holds onto the last colors of day, a wash of copper along the trees, the silver of olive leaves turning inward, the sky deepening toward. That velvet hue only found in moments meant for quiet. There's no ending to find, no final battle, no revelation carved into the stones. Just this, the rhythm of steps taken, the soft echo of choices made without urgency, the story that looped and wandered and, in doing so, became something whole. You let yourself rest here. 2. You feel the weight of the road slipping from your shoulders, the questions folding themselves into the earth like tired roots. The story no longer follows you. It walks beside you. And now it lies down 2 above. The stars blink gently. Awake below, the land curls into itself, drowsy and content. And you? You close your eyes. There is nothing left to reach for. Only the breath you are already taking. Only the ground that already holds you. Only the silence that finally means you are home. Good night, traveler. You made it to the end, or maybe just to the beginning of something softer.